Hey everyone, if you want to learn how to play Iron Maiden's hugely popular song, The Trooper, exactly like Dave and Adrian originally played it on the Peace of Mind album all the way back in 1983, stick around because I'm going to show you all of the rhythm guitar parts in the song, down to some very fine details that you won't get from tabs. Before we get started, I want to say a few words about the importance of this song. So I think this is one of those songs whose brilliance has been overshadowed by its popularity over the years. Mainly by the older and more hardcore fans of Iron Maiden, as we tend to dismiss or take it for granted. But the truth is, The Trooper is an incredibly iconic and impactful song, definitely one of the most important heavy metal songs of all time. I mean, there's a good reason why it's been played on every Iron Maiden tour since Peace of Mind. Now, I saw the band 4 times this year in 4 different cities, and each time, The Trooper received the pop of the night. It's a combination of all the right elements coming together in those 4 minutes and 12 seconds. The magnificent intro, the gallop, the harmonized melody, that unbelievably powerful opening line, "You'll take my life, but I'll take yours too." The sing-along chorus that is so evocative in its melody and harmony, it doesn't even need words. And those 2 impeccable back-to-back guitar solos that only Adrian and Dave could have come up with. So don't let anyone tell you that this song is overrated. If anything, it's underappreciated. Okay, so now that you're pumped and ready to tackle this beast of a song, let's get to the guitar parts. Before we even play a single note, I want to address the rhythm and timing, because there's a very important thing that you have to keep in mind when playing this song. So they're anticipating the beat on every chord change. So you're accenting the upbeat, and then that note will be tied to the next downbeat. This is something you'll find very often in Iron Maiden's music, and it's part of what gives many of their songs that sense of being propelled forward. The only time this doesn't happen in The Trooper is during the guitar solos. In that section, all the chord changes fall on the 1. And that's why it feels a little bit different when you get to that part of the song. Got it? Awesome. Every great song needs a memorable intro, and The Trooper has one of the most instantly recognizable intros that never fails to get the crowd going. The pattern itself is quite simple, but it does require a bit of finesse to get it sounding right. So let's look at the notes first, and then we'll take a closer look at some of the finer details and subtleties to help you get this intro sounding just like the original. So the main part is a 5-note pattern that repeats 3 times and descends diatonically with each repetition, from E to C. In plain language, this means that each time you repeat the pattern, you start on the next lowest note in the scale. And at the end of each cycle, then you'll have a tail that turns it all around and allows it to start over. So it goes like this. On the original recording, Adrian Smith plays the same thing all 4 times, while Dave Murray plays the first 2 the same way and then plays it a third higher on the 3rd and 4th repetitions to add a harmony that helps build up the intensity of the intro. That part goes like this. Notice that the tail is not harmonized. So I've seen some people play it like this. And of course you can do that if you want to, but that's not the way the guys in Maiden play it. So let's look at some finer points to which you'll want to pay special attention. First of all, both Dave and Adrian are down-picking everything. So it's down, 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 pull off, and then down pick again, like this. Next, you're going to want to pay attention to the palm muting. So you're going to want to apply slight palm muting. And by slight, I mean just enough so that the notes don't ring out and bleed into each other. You don't want it to sound overly muted, as it tightens up the sound a bit too much and deadens the notes to the point where the riff kind of loses some of its power and impact. So not like this. If you don't use enough palm muting, it just sounds like you don't have any control over your playing, and the notes are going to be ringing wildly all over the place. So you need to find that Goldilocks zone where it's just enough. Another detail to watch for is the finger roll at the 5th fret on the little tail. So this keeps the notes from bleeding into one another so that the sound is clean and tight throughout. And finally, don't forget the vibrato on the last note of the pattern, which is tied to the first note on each of the 3 repetitions after the first. Dave Murray applies a very slight vibrato. Adrian Smith's unique and very recognizable wide vibrato acts as an embellishment to punctuate the phrase each and every time. If you're enjoying this content, it would be so awesome if you took a second to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done that. At the time we're shooting this video, 63% of you guys watching are not subscribers. And you could really make a huge difference to the growth and future of this channel just by clicking that subscribe button. Believe me when I say your support is greatly appreciated. That takes us to perhaps the most recognizable guitar part of the entire song, the harmonized main riff. Now once again, although the riff is quite simple in principle, there are some crucial details to which you'll want to pay special attention in order to play this one with the correct feel. Let's start with Dave Murray's part. It goes like this. Now let's look at it slowly. Aside from the notes, what gives this riff its distinct sound is the articulation. So you pick the first note on the 8th fret of the 2nd string with a downstroke, followed by the 7th fret with an upstroke, hammer on back to the 8th, pull off to the 7th, and hammer on once again to the 8th fret before hitting the 7th fret of the 1st string with an upstroke. Then once again, pick the 8th fret of the 2nd string with a downstroke, 7th fret with an upstroke, followed by 2 successive hammer-on pull-offs on the 8th and 7th frets. Pick one more note at the 8th fret of the 2nd string with a downstroke, and pick twice at the 9th fret of the 3rd string. The sequence ends with a tail of 4 alternate picked notes, starting with a downstroke on the 7th fret of the 3rd string, 8th fret of the 2nd string, back to the 7th fret of the 3rd string, and finally the 9th fret of the same string. A common mistake made by even more advanced players is to hit each hammer-on in the sequence with the same force so that each note is heard at more or less the same volume. The way Dave Murray gets that very distinct, fluid sound that is so iconic is by being a little lighter on some of the hammer-ons. This gives the riff a very loose and circular feel, which is crucial if you want to play this part as close as possible to the original recording. Adrian Smith's part is played in the same 7th fret box position, only he's harmonizing a 6th lower. So this wider interval makes for a looser harmony than the one we heard in the intro riff, thus giving the music a broader sound. He plays it like this. articulation is very similar to Dave's. Start by hitting the 9th fret of the 4th string with a downstroke, followed by the 7th fret with an upstroke, hammer on back to the 9th, pull off to the 7th, and hammer on to the 9th fret on the 5th string. Then hit the 7th fret of the 3rd string with an upstroke. From there, pick the 9th fret of the 4th string with a downstroke, 7th fret with an upstroke, hammer on to the 9th, pull off back to the 7th, then hammer on to the 9th again. Then hit that note at the 9th fret one last time with a downstroke. And you end by hitting the 10th fret of the 5th string twice, first with an upstroke, then with a downstroke. We end with the tail by simply going back and forth twice between the 9th and 10th fret of the 5th string. This is just a bit different from the way Dave plays it, and it makes sense instinctively because there's something about it that feels more continuous. On the album, Adrian alternates between playing the riff as I just demonstrated and playing it with a B on the 4th string instead of an F sharp on the 5th string in the first flurry. So the first time they play the riff, Adrian plays it with the F sharp on repetitions 1 through 5, with the B on repetitions 6 and 7, and then again with the F sharp on the last one. After the first chorus, he plays it with the F sharp the first 2 repetitions, and with the B the remaining 6. The last time they play this riff, after Dave's solo, Adrian plays it with the F sharp on the first 3 repetitions, and with the B the remaining 5. Why he chose to play it with this particular breakdown, honestly I have absolutely no idea. Maybe there was a logic to it, maybe it was arbitrary just because he didn't want to keep it the same way throughout and didn't want it to be too symmetrical in the alternation. Well, whatever the reason, you can't argue with the fact that it worked. When performing the song live, it seems he prefers to play it with the F sharp. I want to point out a very important detail that is often overlooked, and it's regarding the trill portion of this riff. So Adrian's part ends on a hammer-on, but Dave's part ends on a pull-off. And that's because Adrian's part is not really a trill, it's just straight 16th notes. Dave, on the other hand, is actually playing it with the feel of a trill, and instead of holding that last note like Adrian does, he pulls off before hitting the G note once more on the accented downbeat. Getting this little nuance right is a huge part of making it really sound like the Trooper. Since Adrian returned to the band back in 1999, he added a 3rd harmony on the 2nd repeat after the first chorus and after the solos. It's basically a 3rd lower than Dave's part and a 4th higher than Adrian's original part, which Yannick plays throughout. So you basically get these first inversion triads all together. Now personally, I don't really love this extra part because I find it makes it sound a bit too, I don't know, stuffy. But what do you guys think of it? Do you prefer the original 2-part harmony, or do you prefer the 3-part harmony? Now for the verses. The first verse is a little different in structure from the others, as it begins with a call and response format where the band plays just the chord stabs in unison and Bruce Dickinson sings his lines over the empty spaces in between. From the second half of that first verse onwards, Dave will play the accented chords as quarter notes, so they ring for just a beat before galloping for 5 beats before the next tail. Adrian plays it the same way, except where Dave plays a quarter note, he plays 2 eighth notes. So let me demonstrate each one. So here is how Dave plays it. And here's how Adrian plays it. As with the intro, a little finesse is required in order to keep this part sounding clean and tight. So when alternating between the D and G chords at the 5th fret, you'll want to be sure to simultaneously roll both fingers down and up the adjacent strings with each chord change so that only the right strings are ringing out at any time. Before we continue, I want to take a moment to talk about the gear I'm using in this video. So normally I use audio plugins exclusively, but since this is a tutorial and I'm alternating between explaining things and demonstrating them, it's easier for us to just use the sound in the room as it's being captured by my lapel mic. I'm playing through this Trainer YCV50B all-tube combo amp with a single 12-inch Celestion speaker. I'm using the drive channel with the boost and bright switch both engaged. As you can see, my gain is not turned up all that high. It's just around the halfway point. The volume is almost all the way to the max, the bass is turned down to about 4, and the treble and mids are up to about 6. From my pedal board, you have the EQ in the effects loop, and that's set to cut the lows a bit and boost the mids. The tube screamer is in front of the amp, and that's got the drive almost all the way down. It's sitting somewhere between 1 and 2, and the level is almost all the way up. The tone is pretty much in the middle. This is my exact setup for when I play live. The only difference is that I substitute the amp with that Laney Ironheart loud pedal so that I can go straight through the board and keep a consistent sound without having to worry about all of the variables like mics or tubes. And of course, I'm playing this Ibanez Destroyer DT300 in fire red, which was made in Japan way back in 1981, and it's the exact same model that Adrian Smith is using in the original music video for The Trooper. It's completely stock, and I wouldn't even think of changing a single thing on this guitar. If you want to see a full comprehensive review on this guitar with specs and a really cool story about how it came to be in my possession, I'll link to a video I made a while back in the description. Next is the chorus, and this is probably the simplest part of the song and the most fun to sing along to. So it's just D and E power chords, although Dave and Adrian each play this part just a little bit differently. So let's look at each one individually. Dave starts by letting the D chord ring for 2 bars and then hits the E power chord with a slide towards the neck before resuming the gallop on the low E chord. Adrian also starts with the D chord, but he plays it in the open position and lets it ring for a total of 5 beats, then adds a little embellishment over the next 3 beats before changing to the same gallop as he plays in the verse on the E chord at the 7th fret, although he's mostly hitting the low E string. So something like this. The last rhythm parts to go over in this song are the chord progressions behind the 2 guitar solos. So they both follow the same 1, 7, 5, 6, 7 pattern, only in 2 different keys. Adrian's solo is played in the key of E minor, and Dave's is in the key of A minor. So the chords behind Adrian's solo are E, D, B, C, and D again. For Dave's solo, the chords are A, G, E, F, and G again. These are, of course, all power chords, and there are 2 tracks on the recorded version. One lets the chords ring out, and the other plays it with a gallop rhythm. And if your gallop picking isn't quite up to speed, I made a video a while back that covers Iron Maiden's style of gallop picking specifically, and I'll link that to the description as well. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this part of the song features a straight gallop. The changes during the solo all fall on the 1. As for Adrian and Dave's magnificent guitar solos, those will each get their own dedicated tutorial and analysis video, so do be on the lookout for those sometime soon. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial and breakdown of this most iconic of heavy metal songs. As always, I encourage you to leave your thoughts and questions in the comment section. I love that this channel is a space where we can all get to interact as a community that is passionate about music and all things Iron Maiden. Thank you all so much for watching, and stay tuned for more licks of the beast.